Time for the 49ers Rush podcast. And here's your host, John Chapman.
All right, what is going on? 49ers Rush episode today, and I've got a good friend with me, awesome guy, amazing writer, and that is none other than Jordan Elliot, who I had a really good time hanging out with at the draft, and we were chatting up some stuff, and so excited to have him on and see what he could bring. And we're going to be talking some 49ers wide receivers. Jordan, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. The feel of football is in the air. I know we're a couple weeks out from training camp, but I don't know about you. I'm starting to, it's really becoming a reality now where it's not just this like dead period. It's like, no, football is right around the corner. So I'm extremely excited about that.
Man, it's funny. It's sad. I wake up every day and I started this like stupid counter. We have 63 days until kickoff and even fewer till training camp. And so, man, we're so close. 63 days until we play the Bears week 1, which I'm really, really excited about. One, just the narratives that the NFL has created for week 1, right? You've got Russell Wilson going back to play Seattle. You've got Trey Lance versus Justin Fields. Now you've got Baker versus the Browns. So the narratives are there. It's going to be fun. What's up, Melissa? Shout out to the Countdown crew. Everybody showing up with your hashtag CCs. We got 2 giveaways this week. We're giving away a Brandon Ayuk jersey on Tuesday, and we're giving away 2 T-shirts on Thursday. I got this bad boy made. It says I was drafted by the 49ers, and all I got was this red shirt. So we got a lot of giveaways. Now, Jordan, let's talk a little bit for those that might not be familiar with your work. What is it that you're working on now? Because, again, man, I think you do some great stuff. Where can we find your work, and what are you working on currently?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you can find my work at NinersNation.com, which is the 49ers blog for SB Nation. It's a fantastic team over there. I'm very blessed to work with just an absolutely incredibly talented and passionate group of people over there. What I'm working on right now, it's kind of a dead period. Again, we're between OTAs, training camp. So what I'm doing now is a series that's highlighting what I believe were the 10 most impressive individual performances from last season. So I just put out number 6 yesterday, which was Jimmy Garoppolo versus the Rams. I'm trying to keep it to one spot per player. There's a lot of players who probably deserve multiple spots from last year, but I'm trying to highlight some other performances and some stuff that maybe got forgotten in the grand scheme of things, and just kind of highlight some of the positive things, because I know it didn't end ultimately the way everybody would have liked. But all things considered, I think the 49ers had a really good season last year given the circumstances, and there really were some spectacular individual performances that I thought deserved some recognition.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, man. Whenever I saw your bit on Charles Omenihu, on the wild card game versus Dallas, I lit up like a Christmas tree. I'm a huge Omenihu fan. I'm a Longhorn, so I got to be, that's my bias, whatever. But I remember going through the film on that game and just, there were probably 5 or 6 plays, and he had such a limited snap count where it was just like, oh my gosh, like the impact might not show up in the stats, but when you watch that film, that dude, third downs was just straight fire that game. So awesome series. I love what you're putting out there. And man, Niners Nation, KP and just everybody over there, it's such a good group of people. And one of my favorite things about you guys, I'll lump all of you guys in together on this. Like, you don't do the clickbait stuff. You guys do actual, real, educating content, which is awesome. And so, big reason why I wanted to have you on here. But I wanted to spend more time. You put out an article, and it came out a little while ago. It's early June, a couple weeks ago. Why the 49ers might have the deepest wide receiver room in years. And again, if you haven't gone to check this out, head over to NinersNation.com. You can see it on the bottom of the screen. Go read this article. I thought he did a really good job. So Jordan, kind of walk us through a little bit. What makes the 2022 49ers wide receivers different than what we've seen in the past?
I think it's just the depth that you have beyond Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who've both clearly proven that they are not just very talented NFL wide receivers, but one of the better tandems in the league, especially when both are playing at the high level that they're capable of. I think the emergence of Juwan Jennings last year was huge, and it's one of those situations where, with more time and more reps, I project him to improve upon that. So then that likely where he's probably going to be in that third spot is even more solidified than it's been in years past. And then when you get into 4, 5, 6, you have guys like Ray McLeod, who I think with Kyle Shanahan is really going to blossom into a, kind of like super gadget role where you're going to see him doing a lot of these end arounds, a lot of these jet sweeps we've seen, a lot of screens and plays designed to get the ball to him in space. I really think that the addition of a guy like Danny Gray changes things too, because while he's a rookie and there's going to be some adjustments and we can't project how he'll look on an NFL field just yet, just the element of having a dynamic speed threat to stretch the field vertically, as well as a guy who was very underrated at SMU when it came to moving with the ball in space and generating yards after the catch, which, as we know, is the staple of the Kyle Shanahan offense. So I just think beyond the top two studs, and then obviously I know he's a tight end, he's not a receiver. Kittle does factor in as a receiving threat in this offense. So I think they just have 5 or 6 guys who could contribute every single Sunday, which is something that it hasn't really felt like they've had in recent years. No disrespect to some of the guys who are on the back end of the depth chart recently. I just think that they made a more concerted effort to kind of insulate the spots behind those top 3 targets who are going to clearly be at the top of the pecking order when it comes to targets this year.
I love how you talked about Jennings and kind of what he brings, because when they drafted Danny Gray, I kind of drunk the Kool-Aid a little too early. I'll be really honest. Like, I missed this one, I think, because I thought that was going to be a competition for that number 3 spot. It comes out, Danny Gray tweaked his hamstring a little bit in rookie minicamp, but Juwan Jennings, and this is from the words of Kyle Shanahan, Charvarius Ward touched on a little bit. Juwan Jennings has had the best offseason of not just the wide receivers, of almost any 49er out there. Kyle Shanahan said, him and Ayuk. A question was asked about Ayuk, and he said, well, Jennings and then Ayuk have just had the best camp. They've been killing. Yeah. And shout out to 49ers Faithful Forever talking about that picture behind you, man. Again, I'm a Longhorn, man. I saw that. I got a smile. The Ricky Williams picture behind you is just awesome. What did he inscribe that underneath? I see you writing. I can't make it out.
So I don't know if it's appropriate for the show or not, but Ricky Williams liked to partake in some stuff off the field. So I don't know.
He did.
Yeah.
That he did
I
for
don't,
8 years.
Podcast. I don't, but
I want to know. I want to know what
okay.
it says. If they listen to Ricky, if they know who Ricky Williams is, they know what he did.
Yeah, it just says smoke weed every day under it. So with a little exclamation mark at the end, which Ricky's he's doing some stuff after his NFL career now, and nothing but respect for the guy. So for me personally, I grew up. He was one of my favorite players coming up. That's kind of what this wall behind me is. I have Willis, Michael Vick, Dante Hall behind me from the Chiefs. So. This one, I'm not gonna lie, when I got this one in the mail, John, I was like a kid on Christmas. It was one that I was definitely looking forward to. That's awesome.
Now, did you grow up what part of the country did you grow up in? Because I'm curious with all the teams and players you picked.
I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. I've lived here for 25 years, but I'm a fan of the sport of football, and there was a point in time where, as much as I loved watching the 49ers and I was at Candlestick most Sundays growing up, there also was a lot of incentive to watch other teams and really embrace the rest of the league based on how those mid 2000s years were going. So loved playing Madden when I was a kid too. So Ricky Williams, when I was always picking the Dolphins when I played Madden. Same thing with the Chiefs for Dante Hall and Michael Vick and all that. So
I did post grad in Kansas City, and one of my best friends is an Eagles fan, and so the Eagles were playing the Chiefs one year, and so he flew out. We went to the game. It was the T.O. scored a touchdown. Dante Hall had a kickoff return. It was absolutely incredible. I've been a Niners guy since as long as I can remember. But people don't realize, the 49ers are 1 out of 32 teams. And whenever you do all this draft work, oh my gosh, you fall in love with players. And unfortunately, your team might get, 8 to 10 of them. So many guys you fall in love with go other places, and that's okay. So let me ask this. I'm curious. What are some of your favorite non-49ers currently in the NFL right now?
Oh, that's a good one. 49ers fans probably don't want to hear this. I love watching Aaron Donald play football. He is the best defensive player I think I've ever seen. I'm 27 for all the people, that are going to be upset that I'm not saying Deion Sanders or Lawrence Taylor. I respect what those guys have done. I'm just speaking on what I've seen personally. I love watching Aaron Donald. Kevin Byard on Tennessee is another guy I really like watching.
His matchup against Kittle last year was a lot of fun to go through on the film, and I think Byard might have got the better of him a little bit in the passing game for sure.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, it's so funny. And if you I've noticed when you give credit to a player like that, people get upset that you're, highlighting that, hey, maybe he did get the better of Kittle on some of these reps. And it's like, I try to tell people, I'm a fan of the sport of football. That's why I got into doing this, because I love football and I appreciate good football. So, watching players like that really do stand out for me. I love Terry McLaurin on the Washington team. What are the Commanders?
I was wrong on him. I missed my draft write-up on him. I'm just going to be – I was so off. I could not stand him in college, and I was so wrong on that one, man. I missed that one big time. He's fun to watch now, though, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to, there's just so many that I really, I'm a big Jameis Winston guy, so I'm hoping he comes back and bounces back. I've always enjoyed watching him, the roller coaster that comes with what you don't really know what to expect week to week. You see, a lot of highs and lows, but I think he's a phenomenal talent. Cam Jordan, I'm a Cal guy, so
Cam Jordan's top of my list.
Very underrated player too. He's a guy who's been one of the better edge players in the league for a decade now, and I think that he's somebody that doesn't really get the recognition that he deserves. Derwin James is another guy. I absolutely love watching Derwin James play football. Justin Herbert's becoming one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league to watch. The things he does with his arm is just absolutely insane. I can spend an hour honestly talking about. There's a lot of guys that I really like, but
I think that once you understand, I think that this is probably a little bit of an issue with today's maybe common fan, and I'm not trying to throw shade at all, but when we were younger, we would watch ESPN, and you couldn't get just 49er centric coverage like you can on YouTube now or wherever else you get your content, which is good and bad, because you would have to watch all 32 teams highlights to get to the 49ers for that quick 4-minute segment, right? So it was just different. And so I get the fans that are homers and they just want 49ers and screw everything else. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of leave a little bit of context out of it. You don't know how good George Kittle is until you watch tight ends for other teams and realize, man, this guy might be a good receiving option or whatever else. It's just different. And just because you like somebody else doesn't mean you don't love the 49ers. That's what there is. Yeah, Sean Taylor, number 26. I see United by Nature. I saw people throw in your favorite non-49er in the chat. And they can't play for the 49ers either. DeForest Buckner, we all love him. He didn't count. I saw some Josh Allen. What's up? I see the Camper Report in here in the chat. What's up, man? Oh, I was on his show, just yesterday. Had an awesome time talking with Ben. If you haven't checked out that show yet, that dude is awesome. Shout out to the Camper Report there. All right, so let's jump back to the wide receivers. Now, if I go back, okay, and I talk Anquan Bolden, I talk Michael Crabtree, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but he was good. Is this wide receiver group that we have now better than the championship run? Well, I guess, Super Bowl run. They didn't win the championship. The Harbaugh years, would you take this group of wide receivers only, throw the tight ends out of it, whatever? Would you take them over the Harbaugh-led wide receiver group?
If we're talking 2013, the year Bolden was there, I think that's where it gets really tough, because I do think that Kaepernick and Crabtree had a special connection, and they made magic on a lot of plays where I didn't think it was possible. Bolden, I thought, was very, very special for those couple seasons the year before in Baltimore, obviously against the 49ers. Fans probably don't really remember that as fondly, but I remember being ecstatic when I think they traded a 6th-round pick for him. I remember it was a day 3 pick. I apologize for forgetting the specifics, but I remember seeing the little ticker on ESPN and being like, Anquan, are you kidding me? Because I loved watching the guy going back to his days with Fitzgerald in Arizona. But, it's hard, because I think Deebo Samuel is such a special talent that I would take Deebo right now in this season that he's entering over Crabtree or Bolden, regardless of the fact that Bolden obviously has a very impressive body of work. And I'm somebody who's very high on Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk with a higher target share is going to be one of those guys where it falls back on again, where you're just mentioning, 49ers fans maybe don't watch other teams. A lot of other teams don't watch 49ers stuff that aren't 49ers fans. And I think people get so caught up in just looking at who the top 10 receivers are based on yardage or receptions every year that you lose sight of just how talented a player is. And Brandon Ayuk, somebody who has an extremely impressive catch radius, is very good after the catch, can stretch a defense vertically, is much faster than maybe he may look to the, to somebody who's just observing a play or two here or there. He really improved as a run blocker this past season as well. And then, you get a guy like Jennings as the third receiver too, who just had a knack for the big moment. He had 24 catches last year, but 20 of them went for a first down or a touchdown. And it felt like every time the 49ers needed a crucial third down conversion or needed to move the chains in a big spot or needed to get the ball across the goal line in the red zone, he was somebody they could count on. So I would give a slight edge to this current group just based on the depth that they have.
I think so as well. Now, you said something interesting about the target share for Ayuk. Do you think that he gets more targets with Trey Lance stepping in at quarterback?
I think that there's room for it. I think part of what makes Ayuk so valuable is his ability to win vertically and win downfield. And Deebo Samuel can do the same thing. But I think what we saw was an offense that really tried to maximize throwing between the hashes, throwing in the short to intermediate. And, it's nothing against Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think Trey Lance has an arm that very few quarterbacks in the league now have. And he has the ability to push the ball. Like that throw he made to Deebo Samuel on the corner post against Houston. Very few quarterbacks in the league are making that throw on a rope like that. Like I can't remember the time I saw a ball travel 45 yards downfield and it didn't go out of the frame on the broadcast angle. And
it was flat, man. It was flat.
I think a lot of people don't understand just how much arm strength needs to go into a throw like that to have it travel on that trajectory. So I do think we will see a little bit more explosive plays and kind of like targets to Ayuk downfield. But I don't think I think there's this narrative that like I've seen thrown around a ton that like Ayuk and Jimmy didn't get along and that just because Trey Lance is coming in, the targets are going to go up. I don't think that would be the reason why. I think it would be more so just Ayuk's entering year 3. A lot of times there's, you hear that phrase third year leap gets thrown around a ton. I think he's one of those guys that's poised to do that, which is actually incredible when you think about what he's done in his first 2 seasons as well. But I do think that we will see a little bit higher usage rate from him simply based on the fact that there will be more of a vertical threat in this offense based on the arm strength of the quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just a different skill set match. It's not even like, I don't know. I just think it just makes sense. You go back and you watch, man, I forget. I think it was Ted Nguyen, the awesome, film analysis guy who just does a hell of a job. He's a Raiders guy, but he does a lot of NFL work. Went back through and started showing, just the NFC Championship game and on how open Ayuk was the whole damn time. And it's just not really where Jimmy and the whole thing was designed to go. And that's okay. It's just different. And so different skill sets. And we're going to have to kind of see what that looks like and where that will go. Now, I saw in the chat a couple people, and I've gotten a couple emails from people about notifications having issues. And so I put this in the chat. You can just follow that link there. It's a YouTube thing right now. I reached out to their team. They did a diagnostic. It's not our channel. It's just if you need to change your notifications to the live, because you can click the bell, and that helps a lot. But depending on your privacy settings in your web browser, sometimes it negates that. So if you want to fix that, just follow this link right there in the chat. I think I pinned it. So that's there. And you can check that out and you can kind of fix that for there. So apologize for that. Yeah, it's been a pain in the butt the last couple of weeks. YouTube always changing stuff. It's what it is. What's up, Perk? I see Perk in here. Thanks for the hat. I got the California SF hat on, which I like this one. I do like this one. Now, all right, Jordan. Let's talk. Training camp is 2 weeks away, and I consider you a person that kind of dives deep into things. What are some of the training camp battles that you're kind of like, okay, these are at the forefront of my list, and I want to see what happens in these 1 or 2 different camp battles, because there's still a lot of positions up in the air as far as starting, or even, even if it's just a number 3 or 4 guy.
This one may come as a surprise to some people, but the one I'm probably most interested to watch is Emmanuel Moseley and Jason Verrett, because I think Travarius Ward is locked into one of the corner spots based on the money they gave him, based on the player he is.
Yeah.
I think Emmanuel and as good as Jason Verrett was in 2020 and as good as Jason Verrett has been when he's healthy, I think Emmanuel Moseley is extremely underrated. And I think that he has a chance to beat out Verrett if both are healthy for that starting corner spot opposite of Charvarius Ward. And I know a lot of people have floated out that maybe Mosley kicks into the slot. You have Verrett outside. The fact they have those kind of options are certainly encouraging, but I wouldn't just pencil Verrett in as the starter right away. I think the 49ers are in a position now, which is wild to think about after how the way last season went, where they have a lot of option power at that corner position. And the other one, I'm not going to lie, I love the defensive line battles because it feels like every single season in recent years, they come in with 13 or 14 guys that could arguably make an NFL roster, and they're only going to keep 10 or 11 of them. So I'm really interested to kind of see how the musical chairs plays out on that defensive line group because they have too many good players at that position. And you never want to be upset about having too many good players at any position. But at a certain point, you are going to have to make roster cuts. And outside of the guys like Armstead and Bosa and Kinlaw, where they're locked into those spots at the top, I think there's going to be a 7 to 8 player range where these guys are going to have to bring it every single day in camp to stake their claim on that defensive line group. And you start looking at guys like we were talking about Emenihue earlier and Jordan Willis. Like those two guys had a huge impact on, like without Emenihue, they probably don't win in Dallas. And without Willis, they probably don't win in Green Bay. And those were guys that were kind of back of the rotation players. So I think that it's going to be really fun to see who maybe continues that trend this year, whether it's those guys moving up a little bit on the depth chart, maybe somebody like Kamiko Toure comes in and kind of fills that role of this uber athletic player that gets paired with Kosaric and this explosive defensive line. So those would probably be my two. And then
hold on, before we move on, I'm curious, do you think all those guys make it on the roster? Because I thought Emenihue would step into the Arden Key role, but then they signed, they brought in Kamiko Toure, they brought back Kerry Hyder, and so now I'm just like, and then they drafted Drake Jackson, which are all great moves. But there's only so much. It's the law of scarcity. There's only so many snaps that can go around. Do they keep all of them?
So I went through this exercise. I think I did it with Brad, and I went through if they're keeping 11, who would be the person that I would think would get left out of that group. And I personally settled on Kerry Hyder, and it's no disrespect to Kerry Hyder. He obviously had a great season for the 49ers in 2020. But I think when you're getting to those back end spots, you're banking on the athletic ability. And I think the reason why they were willing to make a move for a player like Emenihue at the deadline last year was they saw the athletic traits, and they have this proven, tried and true method of getting guys with these freakish athletic abilities, pairing them with the best defensive line coach in football and Chris Kosaric, and really allowing them to thrive in a role where they're put into a position where we're going to maximize what you do really well, whether it's getting after the passer, whether it's fitting run gaps. And we're going to, you have so much talent around you that you're not really in this, there's a lot less pressure on these guys to do anything but what they're good at. And I thought you saw that with Willis and Emenihue, where they were really allowed to just get out on the field, pin their ears back, and get after the quarterback. And I just think that the athletic ceiling is higher with a player like Toure, with a player like Emenihue, with a player like Willis than it is with Hyder. To me, one thing I've always respected about Kerry Hyder is that a lot of the sacks I saw in game film were a result of just pure hustle and grit and determination, which is fantastic. You want that on your football team. But I would just bank on the higher athletic upside, especially when you have so much depth at the position already. Give me the athletes, and, you can kind of coach up that grit and determination and hustle and stuff. It's really hard to coach up athletic traits. You either have them or you don't.
And I'd add this as well. Remember, the 49ers traded for both Jordan Willis and Charles Emenihue. So that was somebody that they had to have. They did kind of sign, you had the Kerry Hyder leaving, which whatever, go get paid. Not worried about that at all. No grudges whatsoever. But yeah, his value is much lower than I think those other two guys. But also what's crazy is Kerry Hyder was getting reps with the ones during OTA. So we're spoiled. We're spoiled. Charles Emenihue would start for 15 teams in the NFL if he was on their team, period. He would be the penciled in starter. Yeah, I think he's that good of a player. For us, he's a back-end bubble guy. So we'll have to see what that looks like. Now, you had one other camp battle that you wanted to jump into. Which one was that?
Yeah, so I just want to see how the interior of the offensive line shakes out, because I think Aaron Banks is going to end up starting at left guard. I think that he's somebody who, when I watched his college tape, I was convinced could be a good starter in the NFL. And I think that injuries derailed his rookie campaign. And I think that also when you have a guy like Laken Tomlinson, you have a guy like Dan Brunskill, it's really hard to, make it an indictment on Aaron Banks that he didn't play much last season, because I think that it's unfair to those players who are very good ahead of him on the depth chart. And I think part of the reason, I wrote an article for Niners Nation about it about a month before free agency, that I thought the 49ers best option was to let Laken Tomlinson walk and have some conviction in their pick in Aaron Banks. They unfortunately don't have money to pay every single player that's going to be due to hit free agency. And I thought that they had done a good job of drafting a contingency plan for Laken Tomlinson. So I think Banks is kind of penciled into that left guard spot, but then you pivot to center and right guard. Right now, Brendel's appears to be Jake Brendel appears to be the center. Brunskill has some experience there, and I think Brunskill has the body to play center, and he has some NFL, experience at the position. But then you also, if you take him out of that right guard spot, you lose some continuity there. So I'm really interested to see if they, have Brunskill and Brendel both taking snaps at center, or if it's somebody like Donovan West coming in, or a rookie like Jason Poe coming in, where you have these guys that don't necessarily have the experience or the reps, but have the athletic ability and the body type to play the position.
Because they talked about Nick Zakiel and Spencer Burford as guys who could play center, yet they got no work at center during minicamp or OTAs. So how much of that is, all right, we want you to learn the simplest spot, which is guard. You just stick at one of the guards. And then if you can master that, we can move you on. We know how much the 49ers don't like playing rookies early outside of injuries. And I think another guy that kind of a lot of people aren't talking about is Keaton Sutherland, who came over with Forster, who came over with Brindle from Miami, who got snaps at center as well. He was working with the second team. Not too excited about the Brindle Sutherland depth chart, but you kind of have, if it gets bad, you just slide Brunskill over. I think that's the way they're going to play it. I don't know.
I think it's a situation where I have trust in this front office's evaluation of filling out a 53-man roster. I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt. And I'll see it with my own eyes in a couple of weeks here in training camp, and maybe I'll feel differently then. But as of now, I think it's a situation where they may not be a top 5 unit that I'm going to be eager to write about every single week as the reason they're winning football games. But I don't necessarily think they're going to be a liability that I feel like they're being portrayed as right now. I do think whenever you have a player like Trent Williams on your offensive line, even though it's only 1/5 of the equation, it makes it makes everything else easier for everybody around him. The thing that I'm really interested to see too is what's going on with Mike McGlinchey's quad. Is he going to be able to be ready to go by week 1? Are they going to have to do something else at that right tackle spot? And if so, who fills that? Whether it's Jaylen Moore, maybe it's Justin School. So I do have a lot of questions when it does come to the offensive line, but the training camp battle I'm really interested to see is center, because who's going to push Brendel right now? There isn't this clear-cut competition outside of maybe like Donovan West, who they did give $100,000 in guaranteed money to as an undrafted free agent, which is a very substantial amount of money. Undrafted free agents usually aren't getting those kind of guarantees. So maybe they feel good about him. I had the pleasure of speaking with Herm Edwards, which for me was awesome. He's one of these guys that I grew up watching, on ESPN, watching him coach the Jets and the Chiefs. And I talked to him a little bit about Donovan West a couple weeks ago, and he said that he thought that San Francisco was a perfect landing spot for him based on his ability to excel in his own blocking scheme. And again, his body type, he's a little bit undersized comparatively speaking to other centers. But in this offense, Herm thought it was just an absolutely perfect landing spot. And then you factor that in with the Niners giving him the guarantees. So maybe they see something. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the week 1 starter this year, but maybe he's a guy that they have, kind of penciled in as somebody that they can hopefully develop in-house as the center of the future going forward. But as of now, I haven't seen enough of Jake Brendel to really feel great about it. I don't think he's going to be a liability, but I'm not just like, hey, Jake Brendel's the week 1 starter. He's not. I don't think he's going to be coasting through training camp just assuming that the job's locked up.
No, I agree completely there. Now, Rick put out a point here. Jaylen Moore is so confusing to me because they seem to like him a lot, but then last year you put in Colton McKivitz ahead of him, a couple of times. But man, they're working Jaylen Moore at tackle. They're working him at guard. They're working him at all these spots. Do you think Jaylen Moore has a spot to it? Let's just say hypothetically, Mike McGlinchey's not ready week 1. If you had to guess right now, would it be School? Would it be McKivitz? Would it be Jaylen Moore? Who would be your right tackle if you had to decide right now, Jordan?
I think it would probably be School or McKivitz, just based on the fact that I think they lean more towards the experience. We saw McKivitz get that left tackle nod. It was at week 18, I think, when Trent Williams was out. So I think that just based on the pattern that Shanahan and this coaching staff has showed, I would probably bank on one of those guys. I know a lot of people think Jaylen Moore would profile better as a guard, and I kind
That's
of
what
had
they
that,
said when they drafted him.
yeah, I kind of had that same thought too. But after speaking with a few people who have much more experience and knowledge when it comes to offensive line play, I was kind of convinced that I think, his best role might actually be as a swing tackle and being that kind of sixth offensive lineman that can step into the majority of the positions. I don't think they'd put him at center, but could step in at guard or tackle should a player go down. And unfortunately, as we all know, that's one of the unfortunate realities of football, is that it's not if, it's when. And when you're playing in the trenches like that, at some point you're going to need somebody to fill in somewhere. So I think it would give them great value as somebody who could play left guard, left tackle, right tackle, and kind of be that super utility player. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest based on his athletic abilities and the fact that he's had a year in the system and he's had an offseason to improve, if he was the guy they felt comfortable with at right tackle if McGlinchey's not ready.
I like it. Last question before we get out of here. Shout out to Melissa. She's one of the best out there. She says, do you think the injuries mean Maurice Hurst is the odd man out? Because I'd rather him go than some others. Man, they liked Maurice Hurst last year. If you remember, he made the initial 53. Then they immediately put him on IR so that they could, free up that spot for Jake Brindle. They're all related, these numbers do. But what are your thoughts on Maurice Hurst making the roster and kind of what his long-term look is for the 49ers?
So if I had to project right now, I would say that the 49ers are going to keep 6 more traditional edge players and then 5 guys that can play on the interior and end up with 11 defensive linemen. So I think the edge guys are going to be Bosa, Toure, Amenahue, Ebukam, Jackson, and Willis. And then the 5 interior guys will be Kinlaw, Armstead, Ridgeway, Kevin Givens, who's extremely underrated as well. Kevin Givens is one of their better in-house, undrafted free agent, develop him within the organization kind of stories. And then I think Hurst is one of those guys as well. And that would leave them, again, with 5 guys on the interior, 6 on the outside. Armstead can play inside and outside. They have a lot of guys who can do both. But again, that's where it comes back to, based on the versatility and the athletic traits and all that stuff. I would have a hard time letting Hurst go and keeping a guy like, Kerry Hyder, or keeping one of these undrafted guys they had this year, or a late pick like Kalia Davis, who I think he was a 5th or 6th round pick this past year. So I would say that Hurst stays. I think the only reason that it didn't work out last season was because of the injuries. I don't think it was an ability issue at all. And I think his willingness to come back on the deal that he did is a situation where the 49ers are a very ideal landing spot for these guys on the defensive line, especially guys that are maybe in search of a more long-term 2 to 3 year deal, or looking to get, an ability to rebuild their value and rebuild the perception of what their value should be. And I think Hurst knows that this situation for him is an opportunity for him to really get these one-on-one matchups where he can showcase those tremendous athletic traits that he has. And he's not going to be stuck getting double teamed. He's not going to be stuck with guys on the edge who can't get after it too. There's going to be collapsing pockets quite a few times during a given game, and he's going to have a chance to really showcase what he can do. So yeah, I would expect Hurst to stay, again, barring, any injury or health concerns.
Yeah. And again, I'm not sure how much weight it pulls with these players, but again, Kevin Givens and Maurice Hurst were getting almost all the first team reps through camp. So something to keep in mind. They like those 2 guys, and their athletic profiles are almost exactly the same, which is interesting. But that's going to do it for our time with the man, Jordan. Jordan, can't say thanks enough. Really appreciate you coming on and just being part of it, man. Bring in freaking the information. If you guys haven't already, just head over to freaking Niners Nation. Support this guy. Subscribe. Twitter at Jaylen Elliot. Get over there. He's active there. Where else can they find your work, or what else you got working on? Just so, again, everybody knows what to look out for.
Those are the main things. I started a YouTube a while ago just because I wanted to get some reps in, getting better cadence, talking, not talking for 3 minutes straight. Because I'll tell you what, I can talk about football for 10 hours.
You got some lungs, man. You got some lungs.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to get better about that. I am cognizant of it. And I appreciate anybody who, has the patience to listen to me go on one of these long-winded rants. So I'm trying to get better at that. I admittedly haven't been doing very much on there recently just because I've been busy with other work. And again, I applaud anybody who's been able to fill this dead period with content. I don't think people understand how hard it is to regularly pump out content during this time in the NFL calendar. So I just have kind of it's taken a back seat for me a little bit right now, but I will hopefully get that up and going again. My YouTube's at Elliot Sports. So if, again, right now, I apologize if you go there. I think the most recent videos from like May, it's been a little bit, but Twitter, I try to put out, threads. If I'm sitting here and I'm grinding game film or I'm doing something or something catches my eye, I try to put that out there. And then again, NinersNation.com, I'm putting out stuff a few times a week there. And when training camp comes around, every practice I attend, I'll have a, summary of what I saw, who I thought looked good, where are these battles maybe, heading in one direction or not based on what I'm seeing. So, that's pretty much where you can find it. Twitter and Niners Nation are probably the two most consistent places where, you won't be disappointed. Like, oh, man, I'm following this guy's YouTube. He hasn't put out a video in 2 months.
Man, it's a grind, and it just the consistency and all that stuff. But man, we appreciate what you do for the community and just for kind of being the eyes and ears for everybody at those practices, which we all don't get to be at. So just want to say thank you, Jordan. Keep doing what you're doing, man. We support you, and hopefully we'll get you on here some point during camp just so we can get your firsthand account of what's going on in camp. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks again, Jordan. And man, we're just going to keep grinding over here. And as always, stay strong, faithful.